today. We got Doug here as well as VeriMat, I believe. So we're starting a little late. That was my issue. I did not do a Google Hangout on air. I did a Google YouTube live stream. So we're here. Doug, it's been a rough couple months in the crypto market, and I know you've been through this before. But I have to ask: does it feel do you have any feeling of difference, either for better or worse, this time around versus the other 4 or 5 times that this has happened?
So I mean, obviously, the first time you go through a crypto bear market is horribly painful and depressing. There's really, I mean, there's nothing much you can do about it besides try and prepare to some extent. But I'm getting some feedback.
Oh, okay. Here. Let me get my headphones on.
Wait, hold on. I'm just gonna close Windows here.
Okay.
Sorry. What the heck? Okay. Yeah, so it's rough. This was a pretty intense, precipitous drop in price. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You can see me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I don't do technical analysis really. I've played with it, and I find that it's I don't know. I feel like there's too many ways to correlate things that it's easy to get yourself caught into like a pseudoscience type of correlation, causation relationship with the market. And I do think that there is some value to technical analysis, but I think that at the end of the day, there's things that can happen in the market that nothing can predict in any way, shape, or form. Like, all of a sudden a nuclear power plant explodes in China, and that has ripple effects in the economy. Blah, blah, blah. Those kinds of things can never be predicted. So to some extent, I think to some extent you can monitor trends, and if the market is not doing crazy funny things, sometimes that can be fruitful. But what I find more beneficial is more of a fundamental analysis of markets personally, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I think is going on with Bitcoin, and I'm just gonna switch to this. Okay, and so first of all, so some people, like Charlie Lee, also talks about the cost of production, and other people talk about the cost of production. Satoshi talked about the cost of production of Bitcoin, and he said that in like 2010 or 11 on a forum post or an email, I can't remember which, but you could find the quote online, that that he expects the price of Bitcoin to tend towards the cost of production, like gold. And now that doesn't mean that, like I've said this before on Twitter, and people are like, "Oh, you're spouting socialist economic theory, that like the labor theory of value and all these things." The reality is, it's true that you can, dig a big hole in the ground, and it'll cost you, hours and hours of labor, and could be a lot of work, and you might have to buy machines that do it, and just because you expended that amount of work at that amount of cost doesn't mean that you're going to be able to then sell property at that valuation because you dug a big hole. The first and primary thing in capitalism and most economic theory these days is supply and demand. And I believe that it's kind of straightforward how Bitcoin was designed, and all cryptocurrencies have basically followed this model, which is you somehow limit supply, And there's a bunch of reasons to do that, but there's some basic economic ones. And it could be deflation, it could be disinflation, it could be a cap, a hard cap, it could be a pre-sale. In some cases, people do that, and then that's the supply. In some proof of stake models, that's the way it works. Long story short is, if you're limiting supply and you have increasing demand, then you have basically more people competing for the same coins, and this brings the bidding war up and brings the value up of goods. So that's number one. You have to have demand, and in crypto, the demand is essentially simulated as a commodity, in the form of a commodity-like demand, which is a limited supply. There's not an infinite. Well, there's effectively almost an infinite amount of gold, but it's getting harder and harder to find gold. Like maybe at some point we'll start mining asteroids and stuff, and then suddenly there'll be more gold available on the market. But basically, so the Bitcoin disinflation, decreasing inflation, and then ultimately no inflation at a certain point. That model is essentially what that's doing is changing demand by controlling supply. Now, once you have some demand, so basically, if you have controlled supply, then most of the time, if it's a valuable thing, people see it as valuable, they're going to demand it. Like Bitcoin, there's a lot of reasons to have digital currency. You can send money anywhere in the world. In some cases, a very low cost without any third party blocking the transaction. You can control your own money directly. You don't have to go through a third party. Now that everything's on the internet, now everything has to go through a third party. You can't do person to person cash transactions anymore. But cryptocurrency enables you to do a person to person like transaction on the internet. So this is valuable, and the supply is limited. So people decided that they were going to try and mine some Bitcoin before it's too hard to, because the supply gets smaller and smaller over time, and it's possible that more and more people think the same way as I do. And this became basically a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the supply constraints, in addition to the value proposition of digital currency, resulted in demand. And this is the primary force. Now, if you have demand and you have increasing demand and decreasing supply, this mechanism is in place. Now you can basically put those aside and say, okay, supply and demand are not a real concern. Now let's do a more fundamental analysis of what's going on with the market and the price. And this is where Satoshi said he thinks that Bitcoin would tend towards the cost of production. It's not that it necessarily is valued at that, but it would tend toward it. And this is why. So basically, so right now we have 80%, and this basically applies to all crypto, because all crypto right now is completely shackled by the Bitcoin market. This is just the reality, like shackled for better or worse. We ride up the Bitcoin bull runs and we ride down the Bitcoin crashes, and that's just the way it is. The only way that's going to change is if one of the cryptocurrencies can break free of Bitcoin, and the only way to really break free of Bitcoin is to have a bigger user base. That hasn't happened yet, really. Assuming some supply and demand, you can analyze the cost of production as a reference point for the price. And so right now, the cost of production is estimated to be around 3,100 in China. And China produces about 80%, it's estimated. These things are estimates. It's hard to nail this exactly down, but it's pretty solid. China produces about 80% of the Bitcoin that's newly released onto the market. They do 80% of the blocks, the mining of the blocks. Their cost of electricity is quite low. So their cost of production, because they have subsidized energy from mostly hydro, government subsidized hydro energy in many places and so on. But also they're getting a lot of solar farms now. So they're putting a lot of emphasis on renewable energies. Their cost of production is extremely low. It's some of the lowest in the world, and they mine 80% of the coins. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's one of the reasons why they mine 80% of the coins. So the cost of production based on electricity alone is estimated to be around 3,100 for 80% of the miners. Now, what happens is with mining, you have a couple options. You can mine at a profit because you made your mining company extremely efficient. Despite where the market is, you're mining at profit or marginal profit or no loss. Those are the very best in the business. Most of the time, the average miner goes into loss territory pretty quickly because they don't have the most efficient setups. And so they tend to be the smaller portion of the miners and tend to be not doing it as professionally. And then there's the big miners that, for one reason or another, go into profit loss during a bear market. They thought that Bitcoin would never go down this low, and their budget was too big, and they bought too many miners or paid too much for their warehouse or electricity or something, and they go into the red. Now, this is going to tend to happen when Bitcoin is less than the cost of production in that local area. So a lot of miners in places other than China right now are really struggling. But China, again, before the bear market was 80% of the mining. It's probably going to rise to 90% of the mining as more expensive places in the world start to shut down. So some miners do shut down, and if they shut down, then basically they just kind of say, it didn't work out. Sometimes they blame crypto, sometimes they blame themselves. Sometimes you see them flailing out on Twitter. But basically, so that what happens when the miners shut down is the difficulty drops. When the difficulty drops, the cost of production also drops because you're competing with less people for the same number of coins. So what happens is, so you tend towards the cost of, so the price will tend towards the cost of production in a bear market because it'll tend to equilibrate at the point where the inefficient miners are dropping out and the efficient miners are actually becoming more profitable as the inefficient miners drop out. So it's not, I mean, basically it's not necessarily that the miners that stay in are suddenly becoming more profitable, but it's becoming easier and easier for the efficient miners to become profitable. And so there's an equilibration that happens between the inefficient miners and the efficient miners right around the weighted average of the cost of production. And then what happens is basically the need to drop out from mining becomes less and less as the inefficient miners drop out, because now I'm getting more coins. Now my budget's actually closer to black. So this has been happening. This has been happening pretty much since the beginning of Bitcoin. I'm doing an exhaustive mathematical estimate of this so that everyone can see the numbers and calculate themselves and see what I'm actually talking about besides just verbally. It's a lot of work actually, because because you have to do some careful estimation of a number of factors that you can't necessarily know because cryptocurrency is pseudonymous. Long story short is there tends to be an equilibration of price at the average weighted cost of production, because the miners that are most efficient no longer are as tight as the inefficient miners drop out. So I think that if the price doesn't go below about 3K, then we're basically still holding that general trend, which is the efficient miners they don't have to drop out. The most efficient miners don't have to drop out and quit and give up, because the inefficient miners are dropping out, and everything's equilibrating, and the difficulty would also then equilibrate. So the difficulty's been dropping as the inefficient miners drop out, but the difficulty should start bottoming out too. If the difficulty bottoms out too, then I think we're right around, then it'll be, in my mind, kind of largely confirmed that we're at the bottom probably of the long-term trend based on the cost of production in the majority country where it's done. And then this happened in 2015. It's really just late 2014 through 2016 the price of Bitcoin was basically just riding parallel to the cost of production. The growth of mining was increasing, and the cost was running parallel to it for the whole bear market, basically between late 2014 to some point in 2016 or so. And then basically what happened was then we went into a speculative bubble, which I believe was caused by the halving, because the miners, I won't go into all the details of that, but we headed into a speculative bubble due to the change in the supply-demand ratio, basically, and due to the halving inflation, and then once you start going into a speculative bubble, then you just can go. That's one thing you can't do, I think, any fundamental analysis on, is how high a speculative bubble is going to go, because it's basically almost purely psychological. But I think you can do fundamental analysis on the bottoms, and this is what I think is going on.
Yeah, I read today, and I didn't validate it, but I read today something along the lines of, and there was a day in December 2017 where the price of Bitcoin went up by $3,500 in one day. Now, again, I don't remember that day. I don't remember much. I just remember, like, every day I was like, what the hell? But the fact that if that is true, it went up more in one day than it is worth right now is kind of like baffling. It's like, how the hell does that happen? Do you feel that, I still see all these different people having their opinions. Obviously, some people saying, oh, it's a bubble, it's going to zero, it has no use case. On the other hand, you still see the people that say, oh, it will be, let's say the next time it halves. And I know you're a believer in, 2020, what is it, 2021, I believe, that we'll get another, like,
bubble.
Another bubble. My only worry is, I know that in the past, you look at the history of Bitcoin and you see this rise and fall. It's happened, I think, 6 times now where it's dropped 85%. Last time it felt like the world took notice of Bitcoin. Google released their top search phrases for 2018 today, and one of those was, what is Bitcoin? So it hit mass, it wasn't mass adoption, obviously, but it was mass, people became aware of it in 2017. And my worry is, will it have another run? I don't think it will from the speculative bubble aspect. I think the only thing that's going to make it go up in value, like we saw in 2017, is if it actually has use case. And I think that translates across the whole space. Obviously, we believe in what crypto can do, but at some point, it has to be more than this faith of what can happen and what might it do. It has to actually do it. So I think that's going to be the thing. And we've probably got a couple years. Technology changes so fast. If you think about it, what we're going to be talking about 2 years from now and what's reality today are going to be completely opposite. So we don't know what's going to happen. I'm still betting big on crypto as a whole. Obviously, there was a lot of crap in the market that needed to be flushed out, and hopefully that's what's happening now. Which brings me to my next point or next question. There are people in the community and in general in the whole crypto space that when a bear market happens, it's like, hey, can this project sustain in this market? And I know with VeriConomy, we are poised pretty well from the standpoint that we're a decentralized open source project. There is no real overhead. So bear market happens, okay, whatever. It doesn't affect us, but maybe you can comment on that side of things in relationship to specifically our project and how we do well in this type of environment.
Yeah, so I think what we saw, like with the ICOs and stuff, is people basically doing a little bit of work. And by that I mean, making a token is trivial compared to even starting a blockchain. Like, even if you're not even doing any coding, just getting a blockchain network going is is way more complicated than creating a token. So basically, what we had was a lot of people who who ended up doing mostly a money grab because it was so easy. Basically, if there's a lot of work, and then just less people do it. But basically, the ICO craze was kind of like a money grab to jump on the bandwagon. A lot of times, the people who did this were trying to apply blockchain in ways that it's not actually ready for. Like you could say, yeah, Ethereum can do smart contracts, but like CryptoKitties like brought the blockchain to a halt pretty much, and it was like the silliest thing. And it wasn't that many people using it. So like the reality is the systems are not quite ready for massive scaling. The fees went up. The market bubble topped out and started plummeting, and a lot of people who got in easy set up these big budgets and these big companies, not totally understanding how much of a speculative bubble we might have been in, because they tended to be new to crypto. The people who are familiar with the crypto market tended not to do these tokens. It was more so the people who came in. So I think so comparing us to them is a totally different ballgame, because number one, we've been down this road before. So like all along, through 2017, through 2018, we're talking about what we should do, how we should budget, what we should spend money on, et cetera. And I'm always thinking, and Pat and me in particular, going through all kinds of ups and downs with VeriCoin in the past, always thinking like, all right, well, what's the 5 to 10 year plan? And does what we're doing right now with a little bit of money make us get there,
right,
or not?
Right.
Despite the market. Whereas other people are they're just basically trying to run up big quick funds and then pretty much spend it as quickly. So I think
the money grab, the bigger money grab came from the exchanges and all the people that wanted to get and do the marketing of coins. And so anything related to crypto that wasn't crypto, in other words, not the coins themselves, not the ICOs, but everything even outside of that, the prices were absolutely ridiculous. We were getting messages and notifications daily on different exchanges or different PR opportunities and whatever. And it was just ridiculous. So it made no sense, again, thinking about a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, to deplete. And I remember saying, just because everyone else is sprinting ahead of us, which it looked that way, right? Everyone's sprinting ahead in front of us. It looked like we're standing still. I'm like, yeah, they're sprinting ahead of us, but they're running off the edge of a cliff. And we're going to just let them go right past us and spend all their money on bullshit. And goodbye. See you later. We're still here. We're still alive. We still have, and we're going to show later. I don't know if you've watched the video, but I don't think you have, because I just got it from Richard. But the video of the mobile wallet that we are getting closer to produce. So we're still producing, we're still developing, and that's not going to stop. And that's the part where I kind of feel like this bear market is actually, to some extent, beneficial to us if we're looking at the long term.
It's relatively beneficial, big time, because there's a lot of competition that's basically failing right now, or is going to fail 6 months from now, after their last dollar is spent or whatever. And we don't have that problem, like you said. And it's mostly because we don't really have an overhead. And we also don't have the legal complications of being a centralized entity, a company. We don't have any of that. We are a volunteer, decentralized structure. I mean, people can come and go as they please. We've had people come and go as developers, as social media people, you were the first real marketing type person we had come on in any capacity. But basically every other type of thing that we've done over the years. It's been people coming and going as they please, because they believe in the project or they want to partake in blockchain development to some extent or whatever it is, or mine for a while or try staking or whatever it is. And we can continue to do this almost in perpetuity. So yeah, I think that, and we're working on tough problems that are not solved in large part, and we're tackling those tough problems head on. So I'm more so thinking of how, like you said, the real meat and potatoes is, do you have users at the end of the day? And how do you get those users? And that's what, we're working on those actual real solutions that win. So I think that like the internet was in a number of people's homes in the 90s. And then 10 years later, it was in everyone's pocket in a smartphone. I think there's going to be a similar phenomenon with cryptocurrency, where now it's kind of the equivalent to it's in some people's homes in the 90s. And then, then in the 2020s, I imagine it's probably going to be in the industrialized world's pocket, maybe even second world, and maybe starting to get into third world to some extent via different types of technologies. And I think some of it's going to be precipitated by national currencies that fail, like we're seeing in Venezuela and other things. If there's going to come a point probably where cryptocurrency with its limited supply, it's going to have enough of a user base that it's actually going to start to become more price stable than government currency. So government currency, like for instance, the U.S., when the dollar was gold pegged, partially, there was more often the bear markets, recessions, so on, were more frequent, but they were less deep. Now with quantitative easing and basically just printing money to try and smooth things over, smooth the downturns out, what happens is you basically just delay them, and then they become bigger, and then you really have to quantitative ease, and then you can only do so many cycles before you start to really debase the currency, and this is happening in many smaller nations, and the dollar, for instance, as a hard money is horrible, but it's just better than most other national currencies still. But if cryptocurrency actually gets into people's pockets to the point where there's a lot of competing interest to use it, then it could actually start to stabilize beyond the national currencies, because the national currencies still have the button of print, that they and they're kind of exacerbating the cycles. There's a natural up and down to markets, and printing of money is softening the landing, but basically just pushing off the recession to a later time when it's not, when inflation no longer works.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid is all it is.
Yeah, and a kind of shitty one, but everyone grows up in their currency thinking this is the way everything was and always will be. But it's actually a pretty recent phenomenon. Only since the 70s have we had a completely unbacked money, not in any way tied to anything. So now that's basically, you could say the same thing about crypto, but the difference is there's nobody can push the button and go print. And basically, and this is kind of one of the one of the realizations I think people have when they come to cryptocurrency is that you start to realize that inflation is just a massive tax on all the people. That basically, we were talking about this, that basically, if somebody goes and prints a bunch of money and gives it to everyone but me, what happens to my dollars? Right. They become less desired because there's all these dollars. Everyone's passing out dollars to everyone. And I still have the same amount, and they're worth less, relatively speaking, because I have a smaller percentage of the whole. Right. And So it's like an implicit tax. People don't realize it because they grow up thinking it's normal. So I think we can start to, at some point when user base is huge, starts to become huge, at some point where we could hit a tipping point where, not that the government currencies are going to go away, but that actually crypto is less volatile and or a better store of value. And it could certainly be in many, many ways a better medium of exchange.
So there are some things I want to show. Like I said, Verimad sent a video of this wallet that's the mobile wallet for both VeriCoin and Verium, which looks pretty impressive. And I know we've got some things to do to make that still usable. One of those things is the core update, the Bitcoin core update. So can you give us any progress on how things are progressing with that?
Yeah, so Cinetech has been working on that for a few months now, and he's been working on it for VeriCoin, and he's gotten a lot of the base level blockchain code base updates implemented in VeriCoin, and he's struggling a bit with our proof of stake model because it's a bit different than others. It's a little more complicated, and I'm going to help him and whoever else ends up working on it finish off the port of both VeriCoin and Verium. I'm working from the opposite end. I'm basically going to come in and bring Verium, using some of his code changes, bring Verium up to date with the Bitcoin code base, minus some things like SegWit and other things that we just don't need, to keep our protocol more simple. And then, at least for now. And then, so then we're going to kind of meet in the middle, where Verium will have brought over full compatibility with Bitcoin in the POW context, and then we can fill in the holes missing left on VeriCoin port, and then I can, mostly me, it'll probably be that actually implements Post on the Bitcoin core code base. It's already been re-implemented in the most concise way possible, in terms of the actual code. So it'll just be more so just kind of moving it over to the new code base. When those two things are done, then everything else can kind of move forward. So I've basically figured out 85% of the implementation of the mini block solo mining frequent payout system, but I'm going to implement it on the Bitcoin core version of Verium, because if I implement it on the older version, then I'll have to just kind of port it over again, which is just a waste of time. So I'm gonna kind of leave it mostly completed in terms of the implementation design, and then finish the Verium port, and then add the mini blocks on that. And then the mobile wallets, once the Verium and VeriCoin port are done, then it's kind of plug and play with the UI, the interface, and everything that's been built for VeriCoin and Verium. We plug that in, and then we have Christoph and Marcin. I think I don't interface with him too much. I think his name is Marcin. They're working on the new user interface to put on top of the desktop wallets once they're on the code base. So we're working in parallel. I was designing a new protocol feature. Cinetech got the port started, got a good way into it. I'm circling around to finish the port with him, while Maxwell has been working on the mobile UI, and Marcin and Christoph have been working on the desktop UI. And then we can basically bring all these pieces together. And then we have, everything's been revamped from the ground up in terms of the back end and the front end, for basically going into the future. And then we have our flagship, essentially, desktop wallets that will be standalone, independent VeriCoin and Verium wallets. And then we basically literally take all the redundant code between them and we get rid of it, and we create the binary chain wallet. But we'll have, at that point, 3 desktop wallets: the binary chain wallet, and then the 2 standalones, which are basically the same code base, which is in sync with Bitcoin, that we can keep updated along the way. That was one thing that we didn't really do because we were so focused on protocol design for so long. We didn't really keep the blockchain code base up to date with Bitcoin, but now we're kind of moving out of protocol development phase and moving into blockchain. We're bringing the blockchain code base up to date, and then we can just kind of keep it up to date. And then we have our protocols we have that are new, the novel and working well, and we have our blockchain code base updated from Bitcoin because we're an a different protocol on the Bitcoin blockchain design, and then we can kind of focus after that. We can focus on UI UX. That's and obviously keeping things up to date, keeping things secure, improving this or that. But we can kind of focus on UI UX and all the things that will help bring people in to using crypto and learning that there is such a thing as money that can't be debased by some handful of people. And also I will say that one of the key elements of bringing people in at the protocol level for us is also going to be a proof of stake is one. I mean, you can own coins and just run a wallet and earn interest. And then the solo in particular, we have the CPU mining, but in particular also in addition to the CPU mining, the solo mining with frequent payouts, that's also a major factor advantage that we have for bringing people in. So I think if we combine all that together, we have a real shot of being a actually used system for people.
And I have some thoughts too, and I've kind of expressed it, but never directly relating to, okay, because a lot of people are asking about use cases and what's in store and what's planned. The reality is, on one hand, you look at our project and you think, okay, what are the applications? Well, it could be used anywhere in the world, especially with how we have some things set up. Okay, well, what industry are we trying to? I heard people ask me that. Well, what industry? Where are you trying to? Well, it is somewhat universal, right? It's currency. Mm-hmm. I do believe, though, that I guess I have some ideas of maybe some specific use cases, but it's not like the project has initiatives and says, okay, well, we're going to go for this, or we're going to go after that market or this industry. I kind of feel like the community has the opportunity to say, hey, I want to see VeriCoin used in X or in this way, and to make their own push to make that happen. I mean, me personally, I'd like to see, I've got some ideas of maybe how it could be used in the, to help smaller entertainers, bands and things like that. So that's up to me. I mean, I don't have any extra, pull or strings, but I have talked to some bands and I have pitched the idea of how they could possibly use this. And there is some interest. Well, once you have that interest, then you can, penetrate a small market. And it's basically, I think once we start penetrating different small markets, then things start gelling together. Then you can see it in place and say, okay, that's an example. It worked here. Why can't it work there?
Yeah, the other thing is it's partly just like an economy. Economy is not centrally planned. A good economy. A good economy is grassroots, ground up, because people live in an area and they see a need and they fill it with a business idea or an entrepreneurial something, and whatever it is, and they meet a need and they get a salary for it, because of their innovations, basically. And yeah, so I think we can feel out, we can see, like, touch base with bands and groups and whatever, and kind of see if people are interested, educate them, try and get some balls rolling a little bit. But at the end of the day, the real good stuff is not going to come like, oh, this is the next update and we've added pizza buying or something. It's going to be like, it's going to be people who are mining on their phone in Zimbabwe and are telling their uncle, and their uncle's like, oh, we got to do this, that, and the other to help all these other people and we can start a business and this and that and the other, and then boom, you know, and then it can
Right.
grow. So I think we got to make the tools so that people can just go, you know.
Right,
so I think
right, exactly. There has to be
that's
low
where
barrier.
crypto is, I think, in general right now, to be honest. It's sort of still making the tools so that people can just go.
Right. I think we've got a couple good developments in place to make that happen. Obviously, you mentioned about being able to mine the mini blocks that we're working towards, and being able to use your smartphone. There was a video I just found recently on YouTube. The channel, the Twitter handle is I Mine Blocks, and I think he uses the same channel on YouTube. And he put a pretty good comprehensive guide of the title of the video has nothing to do with Verium. It's how to mine cryptocurrency with your mobile phone or your smartphone. And I checked it out, and obviously he was mining Verium. So that was kind of cool to see. You know, that was not us reaching out to him or soliciting or nothing. That was a natural, organic case where this person wants to mine on a smartphone and was able to do it, and he's doing it with Verium. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg, and it's nice to see that. I'm going to go through some of the questions that the community asked. Some of these are going to be quick to answer. Michelle asked, how can we make it possible to buy and sell VeriCoin with fiat directly and without exchanges? There is a site, it's cryptowolf.eu, that supposedly is making it easier for people to buy crypto with fiat. I haven't investigated it yet. I haven't looked into it myself, but apparently there's some interest in them adding VeriCoin, and I believe Verium as well. I know in the past we had a couple other, there was one Cointel, and there's, I think, a couple others that were in the works. But I personally feel, in terms of adoption, that's also a big step, because if I do want to get involved, yes, I can mine Verium. That's one way. But if I really want to, I mean, for example, let's say a vendor, let's go back to the band example. They're going to do a gig, and you have to buy the ticket with VeriCoin or whatever, and it's $35 worth of VeriCoin to get the ticket, and I only have 15. Well, of course, I can buy the ticket with US dollars, but I'm not going to be able to go, okay, well, hopefully I mine enough Verium to convert to VeriCoin before the date of the concert. So there has to be that easier way, I believe, of getting it. And it's getting a little bit easier than when I first got involved in 2014, but it's still one of the setbacks of crypto, in my opinion. And that's going to change either through, I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be technology that changes that. I think it's going to be just people want, like, just more widely use of crypto, and then crypto to crypto exchanges being more readily available. So
right. I mean, like, if you go back to it was basically 2013. So when I first got in around 2013, you had to do wire transfers from your bank, you know, and they were like $15 a transfer or something, some sort of crazy fee on a small amount of money, and took like 7 business days, you know. So we're way better than that at this point in terms of Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, and then a few others. So this is kind of a process, but one thing is that kind of interesting thing is Square is actually now, I read recently, the Square Cash, it's called Cash App, I think, it's by the company Square. They're actually now the number 1 Bitcoin purchasing anything, but as an app, and beating Coinbase, and they're a merchant company, so they primarily make their money from merchant transactions, and they just decided they would add Bitcoin buying and selling, withdrawing, and it's a very simple app. It's very easy to use, and there's no fees for buying Bitcoin. So I expect over time these types of solutions will come for more than just Bitcoin. And I think if we have a big user base at that time, they will add us as well. I think if we don't have a big user base at that time, they will not add us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to be one of the projects that actually is used because it's worth using, and then all these other things will kind of happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Couple other questions if you have a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
We're getting kind of long on time here, but someone asked if you are involved in any other coin projects.
No, I'm not. I was, and people knew about it in 2014 for a little bit, but I hated it. And I vowed to myself I would never do it again because I was just like a hired help coder monkey type of thing, and I hate doing that. So I like innovating. I like working on innovative solutions. I don't like being told what to do. And in many cases, I disagreed with what was being done, and I had to do it anyway because I was like hired help or whatever. Don't do it. Hate it. Yeah.
And someone asked me. I guess I had made a comment about I had some loose ends to tie up, and they interpreted it as I was going to do this hangout and then say see ya. No, I didn't mean it that way. What I meant was I've got some things related to this project that I've been working on that I still have not finished. And so when I said I got some loose ends to tie up, it just meant I've got some things I've got to still complete, but I have no intention of leaving. And I don't even, it's like I'm here, but it's not like I'm, a full-time employee or anything like that. So I do what I can as I can. This time of year is really difficult for me due to the fact that my business is a marketing consulting firm. We've got a lot of clients that have Christmas end of year, campaigns running. We got new campaigns we're going to set up for 2019. So this is a pretty tough year for me. So you haven't seen me around the last month or so as much, but it doesn't mean I'm not involved with the project and going to keep contributing as I can when I can.
Yeah, and actually, I will say that like what appeared to be our biggest weakness in the summer, or near the top of the market, actually is one of our strengths now, and that is that we are not completely dependent on the price of crypto yet for everything we did. So if I have two kids, if I needed VeriCoin to be $1 to pay my health insurance for my kids, I would have to just walk away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we're aware of the fact that crypto is a moving target in terms of the economics of it at this point, and we have paced ourselves accordingly and still have other sources of income and so on. And this is perceived as a weakness when everyone's throwing money around saying that they're going to do everything with blockchain that is possibly imaginable in the next 6 months, and then 2 months later, like close up shop and run away with people's money. So we have a different approach, but actually it becomes a strength in a bear market.
Right, I agree. This question I don't know if it was a typo or just something I don't understand, but maybe you understand it. Is Verium projected from the FPGAs that are destroying other altcoins? And I don't know what FPGA means.
Okay, yeah. So FPGAs are like an intermediate between they're basically like do-it-yourself ASICs kind of thing. And so basically Verium is protected from GPU mining and FPGAs and ASICs in terms of cost. So if you design an FPGA, you're gonna have to put a lot of memory in it. So for instance, like the people who are mining on nice, let's say servers, or even nice smaller devices. They're doing more than just 128 megabytes per hash. They're doing three-way hashing or more, and this uses 300 to almost a gig per hash. Now you actually run more efficiently if you do more than one-way hashing, basically working on more than one hash at a time. So, so if you were to do this kind of thing on an FPGA or an ASIC or a GPU, you would have to have enough memory to do it efficiently, and it becomes costly. So even if you do bare bones on everything else, and you get really the most expensive thing is memory in the end, anyway. So, so we're protected from FPGAs and ASICs in terms of cost. And I don't see that changing in the near future, meaning in the next few years. If it does seem like it could change, then then we could increase the memory requirement if we have to. But I don't think we're anywhere near this being a real issue.
I think as far as questions go, it looks like most of them have been covered. I do want to share my screen real quick.
Sure.
I want to show this. I want to show a couple things. Hopefully this works here. I don't know if you all see this or not. This is the iMindBlocks tweet.
Yeah.
And he's got a little like 6 Samsung, like basically he buys Samsungs with like broken screens or something, and he's mining these. One of the things that was cool that I found was that like a couple people had left comments like, "Oh, what are you making, like 2 cents a day or something?" And he reminded that what the current value of what you're mining doesn't necessarily. You need to be, as a miner, you need to be also looking at the potential future value of what it is you're mining. And so I think he's got a lot of positive feelings towards Verium. So I encourage the community to follow iMindBlocks on Twitter, check out his stream, and then he's got a couple YouTube videos as well. And
That's cool.
Yeah, and then here is we'll post the link in Slack, and then also in the comments section. So this is the video. Let me full screen. So,
yeah, sweet. That's super cool.
Yeah, I think the audio might just be coming into my headphones. So,
oh yeah, we don't hear the audio, but
yeah, okay, yeah. Well, we'll post this link, but either way, that's a good development. So we've got some good things. Let's see, I don't even know. Actually, I don't know if everyone saw the screen. It might have just been you, Doug. So I might have hit the button wrong, guys. So if you were just seeing Doug's face up on the screen, looking at my screen, that's fine. But either way, we've got. I'll definitely will share these links, and then any questions. And in the future, by the way, this was late, as I mentioned. We started late. We did a Google Hangout on air. When we did that, basically, we had a link that allowed anybody in the community to actually pop in on this conversation and be in the chat room with Doug and I. No one joined. That's fair. That's not an indication that you guys aren't interested. Just maybe people are shy or whatever. I was hoping that Nad Joser, who is in Venezuela, would join in, because he's doing some amazing things in Venezuela right now to promote this project. And I wanted to get his description of what's going on. I'll probably do a call with him, and whether we record it or we just, I write a post or something. But I think it's important to share what he's doing from a couple different standpoints, because I think the Venezuela market right now is really poised. You talked about one of the factors of adoption is currencies collapsing. Well, that's what's happening in Venezuela. So crypto is more prominent there just because of that exact reason. But on the other hand, I think it demonstrates that one person can make a huge impact on this project. Just by saying, hey, look, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and I'm going to do what I can and promote it in my neighborhood, my city, my state, my country, my world, whatever. So it really does start this whole notion that like, oh, well, I'm just one person. I can't do anything to really help this project. I think is I don't want to say foolish, but it's a misconception.
It's the opposite of what's the most effective thing.
Yeah. So well, I guess we'll wrap this up. Again, I appreciate everyone joining in. And, you know, we didn't do one in November. We did one in October. We still want to try to do one of these every month. There is a possible, and I say very tentatively, we may be doing a meetup in South Florida, first, second week of January.
Oh yeah, and I'm good for that.
You are okay.
Check my schedule. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So guys, if you can get to, there's no exact date exactly scheduled. Doug and I will try to confirm something. We've got a couple community members that have indicated that they will definitely be interested. And then there's someone that we're working with who has some retail locations that's very interested in this project. And he also has some good connections. So we're trying to get some things established and finalized with him, and he's in South Florida. I'm not saying his name only because I don't know if he wants to share that yet or not. But either way, yeah. So if you have the potential to probably get into the South Florida area, shoot me a message and we'll try to get things coordinated. But yeah, Doug, if you can get down there, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, guys, thanks again, everyone. And just leave comments, like the video, share the video, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.